Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Thursday. It's a beautiful day. Thursday is always my most difficult day, energy wise. It always starts off a little bit low. Took a walk today instead of a run, but all the fatigue of the week kind of builds up for me. And Thursday is the day where I struggle the most. Um, I try to like wake up a little bit later, leave maybe 5:30 for my run walk, and kind of start slow, get some food, get some energy early in the morning. um, Particularly now that I'm trying this consistent running schedule. um, I've been going on for 18 weeks now, just running every day, Monday to Friday, consistently. um, because for me running was always a passion thing, right? I run because I'm enjoying it. So I would run when I felt like it. I wouldn't run if I didn't feel like it, because it was that. But now at this part of my journey, it's kind of like uh, I have to explore running it from a different perspective. So I'm exploring running from a consistency basis, where it's just a daily thing I do, a daily practice, because it gives me so much more. It's my time to meditate, my time to think, my time to plan the day, plan the week, see where I'm going, and all of that kind of stuff. Um, or recenter myself, if I'm struggling or whatever the case may be. So like today, where this particular week, I've been sleeping very late, waking up very early, um, you know, more than usual. And so today, body stiff and everything. So, you know, um, I take the time out to run to just recuperate. So in running, the good thing about running is you can have recovery runs and they actually help your body to heal, right? I'll do some stretches later on, and get that going. But anyways, today I thought I would follow up on yesterday's conversation with the sweet business and maybe talk about other businesses I did in high school that didn't work so great, with different levels of output. Let's put it that way, you know, um, because as much as I had businesses that were actually able to pay off big important things in my life, um, I had a lot of failed starts, if that makes sense. I had a lot of start stops, because I remember the Forex trading in Zimbabwe at the time was illegal. So when you did it, you had to avoid the cops. You had to avoid the hustlers who would rob you. You also had to avoid people, if you give them hand over cash and they don't hand you back your cash, they will disappear, right? So yeah, I lost quite a bit of money trying my hand at that. I made some money, but then the challenge of trying to follow up on people was just immense. And I was just a high school kid. I never actually trained in fighting or anything like that. Um, so I didn't have any physical means personally to sort of go after people, but I also didn't have the heart for it. I'm not that kind of person. So, the people who in my environment had proclivities to violence seemed to be able to navigate that a little bit better, right? Particularly at that time, um, because you're dealing with different elements. So I tried my hand at it. Why? Because you would always have people saying, "Oh, I'm looking for rands," and others saying, "I need to sell these rands," and you just connect these two people, right? Some people were going to Botswana, going to South Africa, coming in, buying and selling, and that kind of thing. But the Zim dollar was just so bad, it was tanking, that to save their money or to be able to buy certain things or to, just to survive, people were starting to use alternative currencies. At the time, it was mostly rands. The US dollar wasn't as prominent yet. And, I tried my hand at it. When I lost a couple of times, and remember, whenever I made losses, it was at somebody else's expense, right? So that was a challenge. That was the big challenge. If somebody gave me their money and I went and tried to do the trade and I didn't get the full amount, or I didn't even get the money back, I'd have to borrow from somebody else to pay off this and play that game. So in the end, I just kind of left it. It wasn't worth the hustle, and I left that business. The other business that I did was, let's see, fixing cell phones, buying and selling cell phones. Again, that one was difficult. Even today, if you go to get your cell phone fixed, you have no guarantee that that person is actually going to fix it. So unless they maybe do videos and you see them online, see they work online and they can trust them. But for the most part, it's a gamble. I remember maybe 6 years ago at this point, maybe longer, 8 years ago, I did take my phone that I loved so much to get fixed. And I just needed the screen replaced. It was a Sony Xperia Z something. Beautiful phone. And, I liked it so much. I was like, let me just get the screen replaced. They replaced the screen with some rinky-dink screen from some other phone that just had the same dimensions in terms of physically fitting onto the phone, but it had so huge bezels. It was just a terrible, terrible job. But there's nothing much you can do because it's like, hey, we fixed your phone, there you go, type of thing. You can argue with the guys, you can fight with them. So anyways, I tried that in high school, and at the time, fixing phones was a much bigger gamble than it is today. So I mentioned before that I had a friend called Godwin who gave me his phone, and I think I was supposed to sell it to the guys who fixed phones, to take parts and stuff like that at the time. And I ended up getting swindled, and Godwin was now like showing up in my house wanting his money. To this day, I think I haven't paid him back, if I remember correctly. But yeah, so you make such losses. So because I thought the computer business, as phones were coming in, we would move into to phones, away from computers. But phones were tricky. Phones were tricky. You'd have to be in the business, sort of thing, and then full time with it. So any businesses that were away from school that required a lot more, maybe I just didn't have the right infrastructure in terms of people in town that I built relationships with. I knew guys who did computers at some point. In what street is this in Harare? Oh, I can't remember it now. I'll say the wrong one if I say it now. I'll try and go and check it. And yeah, so I remember now with the computer business, we were doing well, and then I think we got a little bit greedy with the computer business. So here's the story, right? So remember, I'm a Jehovah's Witness at this point. I was doing the computer business with a friend of mine, right? And I was doing it myself, right, with some other guys, and then a friend of mine was also trying to like do something there. And so I'm a Jehovah's Witness at this point. This particular friend is a Jehovah's Witness. And he now tells me, okay, cool, there's a institution close to the Kingdom Hall, not quite close, it was in Avondale, that they're selling their computers, or rather they're getting rid of their old computers and they're getting new computers, right? They're upgrading their computers. And so you can come buy these computers from me, right? Sounded legit to me, cool, no problem. But where things got a little bit weird was, okay, cool, we had to show up at night. And we thought, okay, cool, we'll go to the Kingdom Hall, 7 to 9, and then from 9 we head over to Avondale. So we walked, at night in Avondale, from Avenues to Avondale. Got to the place. So this is maybe 9:30ish, somewhere there, because we left right after Kingdom Hall meetings. And we get there, and it turns out this guy works there, and he wanted to steal those computers and sell them to us at a discount, and being honest, we were okay to do that. But he got spooked because somebody showed up for some other reason there, and so now he was worried that the cameras had been turned on again or whatever, and then he called it off. So we didn't get those computers. We tried again later. We didn't get them. So because we were just counting the money in our eyes, because at the price at which they were getting rid of them, you know, or the price that we were told at the time, right? The off the truck price was very lucrative, and when we did find out that it was going to be, that kind of deal, you find a way to justify these things. You're hustling. It is what it is. So we tried that. That didn't work. But anyways, I remember that day. I then now had to leave Avondale, get to the avenues, and see if my family hadn't left for home from church, because after church they'd stay around, talk to people, maybe do some of the activities that needed to be done. But by the time I got back, they were gone, right? Everybody was gone. So now it's like, okay, cool. I gotta get home, right? So I ended up having to walk from Avenues all the way to St. Martin's. But anyways, it's a long walk. So I'm walking, head on the swivel, keeping my eye out for situations, and then the one guy, I'm now in an area where, there aren't a lot of buildings there. I'm almost home. Like, I'm very close to home at this point. I've made it. I've walked, I don't know how many kilometers at this point. Done a bit of running as well. Because now I'm just trying to get home. It's 11 p.m. at night, right? So I see this guy, and he looks drunk, right? And he's walking, he's staggering. So the whole time I'm looking at him, and because he looked drunk, you're kind of like, okay, he's one of those drunk guys in the middle of the night. It's a Thursday night. Who's a Thursday? Cool, right? I just gotta, stay out of his way. Hey, as he's approaching, he kept me distracted while his friend on the other side came around and was coming behind me. So I'm watching him. I didn't look at my back. And as he comes like this, right, I'm making sure I'm staying far away from him. This guy just comes from behind me. Boom. They get me from behind. They put a knife up here. And funny enough, I wasn't scared. That was my first, if I remember correctly, that was my first time being actually actively robbed. No, second time. But that was the first time where like a knife was, the other time there was a knife involved, but they just kind of showed it. This time was the first time I was grabbed physically, and the knife put on my neck, and that kind of thing. And I was still wearing my Jehovah's Witness clothes, and they're like, "No, give us your clothes." They just wanted to steal my clothes, and I think they took my phone. They took my watch. My watch was a watch I got from my grandmother, which I loved. Those back in those days, those watches were they lasted. They're good quality. They weren't like super expensive, but they lasted. They lasted a long time. And so walking back, they, asked me to strip down, and fortunately I had boxers. So I had my boxers and briefs, taken off my pants, shoes, everything. And, so they say, hey, let's walk into the bush. I'm thinking, okay, you've gotten everything at this point. What else do you need? I'm like, all right, cool. What's about to happen? So we go into the bush, and they force me. They say, don't look back, just keep going like this. So they made sure once they got me, they were both behind me. So I didn't quite have a visual of who this person was and what they looked like, or the two guys were, right? The drunk guy was looking down the whole time. The guy behind me, I had no chance. I was too new. Later on, when this happened to me in Cape Town, I was too smart for those guys. Two colored guys tried to pull that move on me. I ducked into an alley and I was out. I was gone. And then they showed up at the top of the alley, shouting at me and stuff because I was wearing these Air Force Ones. So they were very bright at night. But this time now in Harare, I'm there and they hit me with my own belt, so they hit me in my back, and I just take off running and, which is, I guess, what they wanted me to do. They wanted me to run and not look at them. But anyways, I run. I knew the area well. I knew that bush. So I just, did my thing, ran. I get home and, my family's kind of like, wait, weren't you here? Why are you naked? Where are you coming from? I must have traumatized them. Because when I opened the kitchen door, my mom was standing right there. But sometimes they would come from work, then we'll go to church, and then we'll only eat when we get back from the meetings. So why am I putting airports and meetings? From the meeting. So, we'd eat late, whatever. So it was approaching midnight, and my mom was in the kitchen. I don't know if she was cooking or they had just finished eating. I'm forgetting now. But I had to jump over the Juro wall because I thought I could just sneak in, right? And it's like, where are your clothes? What's going on? And the irony of that was I got robbed coming from an attempted robbery that I was participating in, essentially, right? I was going to be the client who's going to buy product from stolen goods, and I just thought the irony was like coming from church. You know what I mean? The irony of it was just, the things you get involved in business, you got to know your lines, draw your lines, and make sure you don't get involved in things that are beyond you. People who get caught and get into trouble, a lot of times it's because they decided to venture into spaces that they're just not built for, right? I know I'm not built for that world. I'm not built for that kind of life. I like my sleep. I want to sleep peaceful at night, right? The few hours that I get, I love those hours and I'm going to get them, right? And I want them to be clean. I don't want to look over my shoulder. So I'm just not that guy, right? And you need to know that about yourself and know that's your limit, right? And if you don't, you're going to put yourself in these situations that you're not going to know how to handle. You're not going to be able to navigate, Now, if I have to survive, I have to survive, like everybody else, that's fine. But, just don't put yourself in these situations and things that you don't need to, and things like that. And yeah, so those are some of the lessons from my failed businesses. I had lots of others, or failed starts, let me put it that way. Other businesses for what they needed. Again, all of these businesses that I was doing was just me trying to survive, right? The mentality was always trying to put food on the table, trying to buy the next meal. For example, in high school, I was just trying to sell these scones so I could buy food, literal food to eat because my parents weren't in the picture, right? It was just the three of us. And, if I didn't make money that day, we potentially wouldn't eat that day. You know what I mean? Like, we were down to like eating pap with water and sugar. You know what I mean? And if we had pap, the garden, we'd finished everything in the garden. When you take like this bean, the leaves of a bean, and you've taken like the last ounce of every grass and leaf that you can eat in your garden, you gotta survive, So the mentality was very survival driven, but the language was very like, oh, we're gonna grow the business, we're gonna do this, and it takes years to really unlearn some of those bad habits of how you approach business. You approach business with too much emotion, too much intensity, or you bring in fear where there's no need for fear, or you bring in excitement where it just is, right? business is just business. It is what you're doing, and it is what it is. But a lot of the emotion and stuff that you bring into business is what trips you up. You know. Um, anyway, so yeah, you end up in situations and things that you don't need to get into. You know what I mean? And I can tell you, 99% of people who get into these situations actually don't make money, right? You can make a quick buck there, here, and there to cover that. But to say you're making real money, it's a very small percentage, right? Um, and you know this. Yes, there are real criminals who don't get caught that we don't know about that are just, they made their money and they're gone, you know, and but the most part, it's not worth it. It really isn't. But anyways, I don't need to preach to you guys. I just meant to tell you that story. Took a bit of a turn there, right? But the irony of it was just amazing. But yeah, keen to hear some of your guys' stories. I know this video will be on YouTube, so it'll be up for a while. So people will watch this in the future, whatever. It'll be interesting to hear people's stories. You know, um, and personal stories and things like that, right? Um, Anyways, I love sharing these stories, so it's like therapy for me. Not therapy. That's a strong word. I don't know if people believe in therapy, but I think just talking about stuff that you go through feels good. Feels good. It's an enjoyable process. So yeah, hope you guys have a great weekend. Don't let any tiredness, fatigue that you've accumulated in this week make you make bad decisions. So I notice right with myself is on the Thursday when I get tired because I've been hitting my target the whole week in terms of my cycles, what time I'm waking up, and the work I need to get through. And as an accountant, right, as a finance person, the work is never finished, never ever finished, right? So you have to actively decide when you're going to take that break. But don't fall for this mistake when Thursday, because you're now tired, you're fatigued, and you're kind of like, it's been a strong week. I just need a little break. You'll make decisions, right? You're going to make decisions about what you're going to do on the weekend. You're going to make decisions about what you're going to do on Friday. You're going to make decisions from a place of fatigue. And then when the weekend comes, you're like, actually, I wanted to do some more work. I actually wanted to sit down, but you've already committed yourself to certain things. I don't know if that makes sense. You know what I mean? So in my fatigue, I make sure I don't make those kinds of decisions. I keep my weekend open because working on the weekend is such an enjoyable experience for me. There's no expectations. There's nobody bothering you. There's and you don't have a lot of other voices involved in your work. So I get to do some of the heavy creative work that my work needs me to do, because that needs you to be sort of cocooned a little bit. So the weekends are a great time for that. Because I'm not a creative person by nature. It's something I really have to work at. So yeah, don't make decisions that you will regret. Don't write checks that your stronger, healthy self will have to pay for, and don't write those checks when you're fatigued. And I've learned this, going in that loop over and over. And yeah, so that's my message for today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Cheers.